Concerning the origins of idolatry, heard the rabbi's recent shiurim. He's talking about, he's now learning Rambam, Mishpat Torah, Hilchos Avodah Zarah. So Rambam says that it started with Shituf. What does that mean? It means they knew about God and they wanted to respect him. And then they saw like the sun and the moon and said, oh, these are God's number twos. These are his ministers. It's the will of the king that we also show respect to his high officials. So then they started respecting the sun and the moon and other things. And then eventually imaginary entities. And then God was forgotten. So, by the way, this is what we call Shituf, worshiping God plus. There is a machlokes among Rishonim. The Rambam says Shituf is forbidden universally. That means even for Gentiles, they shouldn't be doing this. But the Tosafos and other medieval authorities said that Shituf is not necessarily forbidden for Gentiles. The Mai Nafkamina, according to the Rambam, Christianity is Shituf. They claim to have belief in the one God, but then they add to it. And then they also have the Son and the Holy Spirit, right? So that's a Shituf. Whereas the Tosfos would say that, yes, Jews shouldn't be doing Shituf, but for Goyim, Shituf is acceptable. Rambam doesn't hold of Shituf, and that's why he connects this. So it could be that the Tosfos and others held of this Shituf is sort of permissible for Goyim. They held it out of duress, because they couldn't live in Christian countries and say that they're idolaters. Interestingly enough, that all those who felt comfortable enough to speak out against Christianity happen to live in non-Christian countries. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that in your particular example, maybe not. Why? Because the Rambam didn't hide didn't mask any of his opinions. If he really felt that way about Muslims, he would have written it in secrecy, and then it would have come out like, he would have sent the letter to Yemen or something, so that at least the Yemenites know the truth about Islam. By the way, he's not exactly a fan of Islam. He calls Muhammad that Meshuggah, and all that. He says worse things about him than he does sometimes about Jesus. So I think that if Rambam had anything to say about how bad Islam is, he would have said it. I think he was pulling punches. So the problem is that historians see that monotheism evolved from idolatry. You look at natural anthropology and all that. What do they say? God, the God, was discovered later. It used to be, let's say, before Abraham, everybody worshipped, pantheons of gods. It just depended where you were. If you're in the East, they had the pantheon of the East, and if you're in Egypt, they had that pantheon. If you're in Greece, they had whatever it was, and the Canaanites had their pantheon also. And then eventually, people came to this idea that there's one God. Avraham Avinu started spreading such an idea, and it basically caught on. So the way the historians and the anthropologists say, it's the opposite of the Rambam. Rambam says it started with monotheism, and it devolved. So what's the answer? So I would say that Rambam's taking a midrashic approach. He's talking about the first time around in Enosh's days, as he says. The historians see everything post-diluvian. The historians are looking at the world as we see with natural history, which we can only see up until the flood, so to speak. And Rambam has to explain if Noach was the only who knew about God, and he had his 3 sons, presumably he was with them, he told them about God, right? Like, Dad, why are you building this ark? Why are we getting onto this ark? Why are we gathering all these animals? Because God is going to destroy the world. So obviously that nucleus of humanity that was on the ark didn't bring idolatry with them. They say Ham, he got started right away with that afterwards. But you understand, Rambam is describing the advent of idolatry, but it would have all been wiped out eventually the way he describes it. So it must be what the historians have discovered is basically what we see post-flood, which is the only thing we could see for now, which is after the flood, the people, started worshiping whatever they saw, pantheons, and God had been forgotten. What the Rambam describes is I guess, sort of an ideal situation. Okay, we've discussed this. What does the flood mean to actual history? When does real biblical history start? Right, that's a very complicated matter. We discussed this before. Go look it up. But basically, it was Nimrod's time. The Torah itself would basically say that idolatry as we know it, and what the historians see, starts with pre-Abrahamic times, Nimrod and the rest of them. Wherever you had human civilization, those in power created gods to hold on to the masses and also try to explain that which was unexplainable, at least to them.